Yeah, I think that movie, like, anytime Sydney walks on stage for the rest of her life,
Oh
it's
my god,
just
it's gonna
gonna
be
it's gonna
unwritten.
In late 2023, Hollywood crowned a new golden pair. Sydney Sweeney, fresh from the acclaim of Euphoria, and Glen Powell, known for his breakout in Top Gun: Maverick, suddenly became inseparable in the public eye. Their romantic comedy, Anyone But You, was marketed not just as a film, but as a chemistry-driven phenomenon. Photos from press tours showed them laughing too easily, lingering too long in each other's gaze. Interview soundbites painted them as playful confidants. For fans, it looked less like acting and more like revelation. Two young stars who had turned fiction into fact. But off-screen, the story grew complicated. Glen's longtime girlfriend, model Gigi Paris, ended their relationship just as rumors about his connection with Sydney intensified. Meanwhile, Sydney's engagement remained an ambiguous backdrop. She insisted she was happily committed, but rarely mentioned her fiancé by name. The tension between private commitments and public performance blurred every boundary. Was their bond genuine friendship, a romance hidden in plain sight, or simply a carefully crafted Hollywood act designed to sell tickets? What began as a charming, on-screen partnership soon spiraled into one of the most scrutinized dynamics in modern celebrity culture. To understand how this illusion took root, we need to go back to the beginning, the public stage where it was built. The partnership between Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell did not begin in a vacuum. In early 2022, Sony Pictures announced a new romantic comedy, loosely inspired by Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, with two rising stars attached. The casting instantly raised eyebrows. Sydney, already branded as HBO's next big name after Euphoria, 2019, carried both critical acclaim and a growing fan base. Glen, fresh from his supporting role in Top Gun: Maverick, 2022, the blockbuster, that grossed over $1.4 billion worldwide, was positioned as Hollywood's new leading man. On paper, the pairing seemed like a studio calculation. In practice, it became a cultural lightning rod. From the first table reads, producers and journalists began using the phrase rom-com revival. Entertainment Weekly ran a headline in September 2022. Sweeney and Powell aim to bring back the golden age of chemistry. The language was telling. The industry wasn't selling just a movie. It was packaging intimacy. By mid-2023, when filming wrapped in Australia, behind-the-scenes stills flooded social media. The two stars in casual attire were photographed laughing in between takes, hugging crew members, and playfully gesturing toward each other. These images, whether candid or carefully released, were amplified by official studio accounts. Fans began circulating collages under hashtags like #RomCom is back and #Sid Powell. The press tour elevated the illusion. In December 2023, at the Los Angeles premiere, Sydney walked the carpet in a custom Miu Miu gown, its shimmering cutouts designed to echo her character's boldness. Glen, in a tailored black tuxedo, leaned close during photo ops, whispering jokes that made Sydney laugh on cue. Wire image photographers captured frames that looked less like co-stars and more like a wedding announcement. The Daily Mail captioned, "One viral image. Are they acting or in love?" Television appearances reinforced the narrative. On Jimmy Kimmel Live, December 2023, the pair told a playful anecdote about an improvised scene in which they burst into laughter. Their timing, overlapping words and knowing glances made the audience roar. Sydney added, "It's impossible not to have fun with Glen," while Glen chimed in, "She's the best partner you could ask for." These quotes became instant pull lines across entertainment blogs. Magazines followed suit. Sydney graced the January 2024 cover of Cosmopolitan, crowned with the headline, "Rom-com Queen, Sydney Sweeney brings chemistry back." Glen appeared in Men's Health, February 2024, where the interviewer noted, "He can't mention Sweeney," without smiling. Whether authentic or scripted, the repetition cemented a message. These two were more than colleagues. They were a phenomenon. Franchise positioning also played a role. Sony marketed Anyone But You not only as a standalone film, but as the rebirth of the studio's romantic comedy machine. Promotional trailers highlighted bloopers of Sydney and Glen giggling between takes. Posters were designed to echo classic rom-coms of the 1990s with taglines like enemies, lovers, or something in between. Yet the real tagline, unspoken but understood, was, "Look how much fun they're having together." By the time the movie premiered worldwide on December 22, 2023, the illusion had hardened into fact for many viewers. For casual fans, it was simply charming. For dedicated followers of celebrity culture, it felt like the beginning of a new Hollywood it duo. And for Sony Pictures, it was the perfect storm. A storyline that blurred art and reality, drawing audiences not just to a film, but to the spectacle of a friendship that seemed too perfect to question. But perfection rarely survives scrutiny. Once the spotlight shifted from red carpets to private lives, the cracks in the narrative began to show. The image of effortless chemistry was powerful, but beneath the surface, subtle signs suggested the bond between Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell was not as seamless as it appeared. What looked like laughter on red carpets began to take on a more complicated meaning when viewed alongside shifting personal circumstances and social media silences. The first crack emerged in April 2023. While filming in Australia was still fresh in fans' minds, Glen's longtime girlfriend, model Gigi Paris, unfollowed both him and Sydney on Instagram. Soon after, she posted a cryptic message, "Know your worth and on to the next," sparking speculation that their relationship had ended. Entertainment Tonight confirmed days later that Powell and Paris had split, citing distance and busy schedules. Yet the timing was suspicious. Rumors swirled. Had the two convincing on-screen chemistry spilled into real life? The narrative of friendship was now tangled with whispers of betrayal. Meanwhile, Sydney's personal life became its own subplot. She had been engaged to Jonathan Davino since early 2022, a fact repeatedly mentioned in profiles. Yet during the press tour, her references to Davino grew curiously vague. In December 2023, when asked by Access Hollywood about balancing work and relationships, Sydney smiled and said, "I'm very happy and very supported," but declined to mention her fiancé by name. For fans, the omission was glaring. If the engagement was solid, why the evasiveness? Patterns of absence also fueled speculation. Promotional footage highlighted the duo constantly together, yet outside official appearances, Glen rarely posted photos with Sydney. His personal Instagram, once filled with behind-the-scenes camaraderie, shifted to solo shots and professional updates. By contrast, Sony's official channels doubled down on their Sid Powell content, releasing bloopers and candid stills that seemed designed to maintain the illusion. The contrast was striking. When the cameras were rolling, the chemistry sparkled. When left to their own accounts, the connection vanished. Industry insiders noticed the tension, too. A December 2023 piece in Variety noted the extraordinary reliance on Powell and Sweeney's chemistry to market the film, adding that, off-camera, both stars appear cautious about fueling speculation further. That caution read like distance, a reminder that what audiences consumed was a curated narrative. Money and power also entered the equation. Sydney, as both lead actress and executive producer of Anyone But You, reportedly earned a higher back-end deal. Powell, while the male lead, did not hold producer credits. According to a Hollywood Reporter breakdown of casting negotiations, this created subtle disparities in how the film's promotion was structured. Sydney often leading interviews, Glen in a supportive role. For two stars marketed as equals, the imbalance did not go unnoticed. Was this dynamic merely logistical, or did it strain the off-screen rapport? Even their approaches to publicity revealed differences. Sydney leaned into the rom-com revival branding, frequently referencing When Harry Met Sally or 10 Things I Hate About You as inspirations. Glen, by contrast, emphasized the film's comedy and his admiration for Sydney's work ethic. Their answers rarely overlapped, suggesting carefully managed narratives rather than spontaneous rapport. On Good Morning America, DEC 2023, when asked about the rumors, Sydney laughed, "It means we did our job," while Glen nodded politely without elaborating. The lack of unified messaging was itself a signal. Cracks in the facade. Fans dissected every frame of body language. TikTok compilations compared their laughter on red carpets to moments of stiff formality when caught off guard. A viral thread in January 2024 pointed out how Glen often stepped back during interviews, letting Sydney dominate the conversation. Some saw it as chivalry, others read it as fatigue. By early 2024, the conversation had shifted from "Are they in love?" to "Are they even friends?" The once golden image of perfect chemistry was now layered with suspicion. What had begun as whispers on gossip blogs had hardened into mainstream coverage, with headlines like "Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell, too close for comfort?" in the Daily Beast. The illusion of friendship was fraying. What had looked like camaraderie was increasingly interpreted as performance under pressure. Cracks were no longer rumors. They had become patterns impossible to ignore. And soon, a very public scandal would push those patterns into the spotlight. The tension that had simmered for months finally boiled over in December 2023, when Anyone But You premiered in Los Angeles. On the surface, it was a celebration. The red carpet, the cameras, the promise of a revitalized romantic comedy. But, to fans and journalists alike, the premiere became something else entirely. A stage where the performance of intimacy blurred into something uncomfortably real. Sydney arrived in a shimmering silver Miu Miu gown. Glen, in a crisp black tuxedo, leaned close for photographers, whispering jokes that made Sydney throw her head back in laughter. The images exploded across the internet within hours. People magazine ran the headline, "Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell steal the spotlight with their chemistry." Comment sections flooded with speculation. Was this still acting, or evidence of something more? The scandal was sealed not by a photo, but by words. During a press junket days later, Sydney looked directly at Glen and said, "He's the best rom-com partner I could ask for." The clip went viral on TikTok, garnering over 15 million views in a single week. Fans dissected Glen's smirk in response, debating whether it was pride, embarrassment, or something more telling. Then came the interviews that magnified the illusion. On the Today Show, Glen joked, "We laughed our asses off making this movie. Sydney's amazing." What might have been harmless banter now fueled tabloid headlines. Variety published a feature titled, "Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell Spark Dating Rumors Amid Press Tour," explicitly linking Glen's recent breakup with Gigi Paris to the duo's growing closeness. The article quoted an unnamed insider. "Their chemistry is undeniable, but it's become a PR headache." Social media split into factions. On Twitter, the hashtag #SydPowell trended for days. Some fans celebrated the supposed romance, posting edits that romanticized every glance and laugh. Others criticized the duo, accusing Sydney of disrespecting her fiancé, Jonathan Davino, who remained noticeably absent from the spotlight. Entertainment blogs framed the story as a love triangle, even though no evidence confirmed anything beyond speculation. The fallout for Glen was particularly sharp. Paparazzi captured him in Los Angeles looking visibly drained, dodging questions about Sydney. His publicist issued a brief statement to E! News in January 2024. "Glen and Sydney are close friends and professional collaborators. Any speculation beyond that is untrue." But the denial landed flat. In the court of public opinion, silence and vagueness often sound like confirmation. For Sydney, the balancing act grew even more precarious. At the Critics' Choice Awards in January 2024, she appeared solo on the red carpet, wearing her engagement ring but avoiding all questions about her personal life. A viral tweet compared her cautious smile that evening to the carefree laughter she displayed next to Glen. Two different Sydneys, one for the fiancé, one for the cameras. What elevated the situation from rumor to scandal was the sheer visibility. Anyone But You was no longer just a film, it was a cultural event. The marketing relied so heavily on Sydney and Glen's dynamic that their private lives became inseparable from the box office narrative. And the numbers reinforced it. By February 2024, the movie had grossed over $200 million worldwide, far surpassing expectations for a mid-budget romantic comedy. Critics and analysts alike suggested the controversy had boosted ticket sales. Even mainstream outlets began asking whether Hollywood had crossed a line. The New York Times published a think piece in January 2024 titled, "When PR Sells Romance, What Happens to Reality?" The article questioned whether studios were exploiting off-screen speculation to inflate interest. In doing so, it reframed Sydney and Glen's supposed friendship not as a private story, but as a cautionary tale about celebrity culture. The turning point was clear. What had once been a charming illusion of friendship had now become a scandal debated across every platform. The mask shattered in public. When the dust settled after the premiere frenzy, the question was no longer whether Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell had chemistry. It was how that chemistry, real or perceived, would shape their personal reputations, their careers, and even the trajectory of the film that launched the scandal. For Glen, the immediate consequence was personal upheaval. His split with model Gigi Paris in April 2023 became inseparable from the "anyone but you" narrative. What might have been a quiet breakup was now reinterpreted through the lens of red carpet photos and viral clips. By early 2024, gossip sites consistently referred to him as the flirty co-star, a label that undercut his image as a grounded rising star. The association lingered. Even when he was cast in Richard Linklater's Hit Man 2024, interviews circled back to his dynamic with Sydney, overshadowing his professional achievements. Sydney faced a different set of pressures. She remained engaged to Jonathan Davino, but the silence around him became deafening. In interviews, she carefully sidestepped questions about her private life. A January 2024 profile in The Hollywood Reporter described her as poised but cautious, noting how the journalist was not allowed to ask about Davino. On social media, fans noticed the contrast. She wore her engagement ring at award shows, yet her feeds were filled with professional highlights, never personal milestones. For an actress known for her openness in previous interviews, the omission spoke volumes. The public divide was stark. One side, energized by the shock Sid Powell trend, framed the duo as a fairy tale couple, undone by Hollywood's refusal to acknowledge their truth. The other side accused Sydney of disrespecting her fiancé and exploiting speculation for publicity. Think pieces emerged weekly. The Atlantic in February 2024 ran an essay titled, "Do Rom-Coms Now Rely on Off-Screen Scandal?" arguing that the marketing of Anyone But You had crossed into moral ambiguity. Audiences were no longer watching a love story on screen, but debating whether the actors themselves were selling their private lives. The irony was that the controversy strengthened the film's performance. With a modest budget of $25 million, Anyone But You was never expected to break records. Yet by March 2024, it had grossed over $200 million worldwide, making it one of Sony Pictures' biggest romantic comedy successes since Hitch, 2005. Industry analysts credited the surge not only to nostalgia for the genre, but also to the non-stop speculation about Sydney and Glen. The scandal, far from damaging box office returns, had become the engine of its success. But this commercial triumph came at a personal cost. Glen retreated from public appearances for several months in early 2024, surfacing only for promotional obligations tied to his new projects. Sydney, meanwhile, took on a producer role in developing upcoming projects for HBO, shifting focus to her craft. Yet the shadow of the scandal lingered. Even interviews about new ventures circled back to that rom-com chemistry. For the studio, the aftermath raised thorny questions. Could future rom-coms succeed without leveraging off-screen illusions of intimacy? Or had Hollywood permanently rewritten the playbook, making real-life drama part of the marketing plan? Audiences, too, felt the weight of the spectacle. On TikTok, compilations of Sydney and Glen's interactions were re-edited with captions like, "The PR machine at work," or "Proof it was all scripted." The tone had shifted from admiration to cynicism. What once looked like magic now appeared mechanical, manufactured, a testament to how quickly public perception can sour. In the end, both actors emerged intact professionally, Sydney securing leading roles and producing credits, Glen cementing his place as a bankable lead. But their supposed friendship became less a story of connection than of absence. Where once fans saw a bond, now they saw gaps, silences, and calculated performances. The absence became a character. When the credits rolled on Anyone But You, audiences left the theater with more than just the memory of a romantic comedy. They carried with them a case study in how Hollywood packages intimacy, an illusion of friendship, maybe even love, designed not only to sell a film, but to dominate cultural conversation. The dynamic between Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell revealed a pattern that has echoed through Hollywood history. Studios have long blurred the line between reality and performance, turning co-stars into confidants for the sake of headlines. In 2005, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt's promotional tour for Mr. and Mrs. Smith transformed a mid-budget action comedy into a global phenomenon, largely because their real-life connection overshadowed the film itself. Nearly 20 years later, Sydney and Glen became the rom-com iteration of that same strategy. Yet this time, the audience was savvier. In 2024, TikTok edits and Reddit threads dissected every smile, every body language cue, every Instagram silence. Hashtags like "the PR couple" and "Sid Powell fake" trended alongside genuine shipping edits. Media literacy had sharpened. Fans no longer consumed the illusion passively. They debated, critiqued, and in many cases, exposed it. A viral January 2024 TikTok, with over 5 million views, posed the blunt question: are we watching romance or marketing? This dual awareness created a strange legacy. On one hand, Anyone But You succeeded wildly, over $200 million in global box office on a $25 million budget. It proved the commercial power of manufactured intimacy. On the other hand, it left audiences more skeptical than ever. For every fan enchanted by Sydney and Glen's chemistry, there were just as many who rolled their eyes, convinced the entire spectacle was orchestrated. For Sydney, the episode solidified her as both a leading actress and a producer who understood the mechanics of publicity. She emerged with expanded influence in Hollywood, developing projects under her production banner. For Glen, the scandal marked him indelibly as the charming rom-com lead, but also as a case study in how personal life can be consumed as marketing collateral. Their reputations survived, even grew, but always with an asterisk. Was it real, or was it scripted? The broader industry took note. By spring 2024, trade publications like Deadline ran features asking whether future rom-coms could thrive without off-screen shipping narratives. Analysts speculated that this strategy, while effective in the short term, risked burning audience trust. Could Hollywood keep selling intimacy if viewers no longer believed it? Ultimately, the legacy of Sydney and Glen's friendship is paradoxical. Their supposed closeness revived an entire genre, proving that rom-coms could still draw crowds in the streaming era. but it also spotlighted the machinery behind the illusion, reminding fans that in Hollywood, even smiles can be scripted. The cultural footprint remains. Memes, headlines, think pieces, and the lingering question of authenticity. Just as audiences love the movies, they are increasingly aware of the strings being pulled behind them. And so, the story of Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell leaves us with a final provocation. In a world where marketing and reality overlap, how can anyone tell where the performance ends and the friendship begins? So what do we make of it all? Was Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell's bond a genuine friendship, caught in the glare of publicity, or a meticulously engineered illusion designed to sell tickets? The truth may never be fully known, but the questions it raises linger long after the cameras stop flashing. Do we, as audiences, accept these stories at face value, or do we peel back the curtain and examine how Hollywood sells connection as commodity? Now it's your turn. Do you believe this friendship was ever real, or just another performance written into the script of celebrity culture? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the conversation alive with respect and curiosity. And if you want more untold stories of Hollywood's hidden tensions, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because in Hollywood, even love can be scripted. So what makes a friendship real?